Hi there, welcome to another painting tutorial. So in this tutorial, we're going to paint this brown moth. So let's get started. And I want to start with a wash. So let's grab a size 6 filbert. And actually, let's grab a little bit of a larger filbert. I have this size 11, but you could use like a 10 or an 8. And let's try to make kind of an orange wash for the underpainting. You can take a little bit of this orangey red shade and then add a little bit of this yellow ochre. And we're working from lighter colors to darker colors. So get quite a bit of water on the brush to get a nice watery wash. And then go ahead and just put an initial layer down of this orange. So you can see that the larger brush helps us to cover more area, and it also allows us to have cleaner brush strokes. And I want this wash to be pretty transparent so that the sketch underneath kind of shows through. And I can just kind of use the edge of that round filbert to get the edge of the wings. And just go back and add water as you need to. I took this picture at a museum. They had a kind of a butterfly pavilion exhibit. I found this little guy sitting on the ground and I took a nice picture. And I'll try to put the picture on Pinterest, and you can also take a screenshot and then copy the sketch. And you could do this in watercolor if you wanted to. You could also use gouache paint, but here we're using acrylic. I like to use acrylic because it's kind of the best of both worlds. Okay, and then after you have that initial wash, you can just kind of let that dry. So while that's drying, we can add a little bit of detail and put in the antennas. So let's take a size 0 spotter brush and see if we can add the antennas there. You could also do this with a liner brush. So I'm going to take some Payne's gray and carefully, so the end of the antenna is a little bit bigger, so I'm just going to press down lightly and then lift up, and then do that same thing on the other side, press down and lift up, and that gives you kind of that oval shape at the end of the antenna. And then let's see if we can just use the very tip of the brush to make a very thin line here. And then do that same thing on the other side. Make sure you have enough paint on the brush, and we're just putting a very light pressure, and that's kind of allowing us to get a very thin line. If you have some skipping there, that probably just means you don't have enough water or enough paint on the brush. And try to roll the end. So then I'm just going to go back and kind of clean up some of that skipping that we had. Okay, and then we can be done with that brush. And let's move to a size 6 round brush. And for that, I want to try to put in the eyes and the body. And let's use this Vandyke Brown. And that's just kind of a warm, dark shade of brown. So then see if you can put in the eyes, and these are kind of just 2 circle shapes. And then the body is kind of separate, so you can leave a little bit of a gap there just to make the illusion of that separation. And then let's just kind of press down and put in that body shape. You can, if you look at your reference photo, you can see that it has kind of different sections of the body for the insect. So we can kind of make that illusion in paint just by kind of painting different shapes. Instead of making it all one shape, we can do kind of break it up into smaller shapes like little rectangles and ovals. Okay, and then we can let that dry. And next, let's take a size 6 filbert and let's go ahead and add some of that local color. And that's just kind of a base color. And I want to do that. Let's do some Vandyke Brown. Maybe mix a little bit of Vandyke Brown with some Burt Sienna. And that's just going to give us a little bit more of a mid-tone brown. And let's see if we can put that in on the wings. And we need to use a little more paint. Sometimes I'm just too conservative with my paint. So don't be afraid to waste the paint. You can buy more. And that's something I'm working on myself, is just using enough paint. So look at your reference photo and see that you have these nice orange marks here, and you should have kind of made those with your sketch. And kind of go around those with the brown paint. And that's gonna allow you to have some of this orange kind of poke through. And then do that on the same side. Leave those orange marks. And then that orange that you painted on the top is just gonna, or that you painted initially, is just gonna show through, and it's gonna give a nice effect. So we're kind of working in layers here. And again, we don't have to make it exactly like the picture. You just want the main idea of the butterfly. Okay, so that's your second layer. And you might want to let that dry before moving on. So look at the reference photo. You can see you have some, let's see, let's try to make the, let's kind of separate these wings. So let's make the wings down here just a little bit darker. And then the wings on the top a little bit lighter. So just take your dark brown, Vandyke Brown is what I'm using. Could also use like a raw umber. And I'm just trying to put in that darker color. So you see that there's like a wing, one set of wings on the bottom, and then another set of wings on the top. So I'm just trying to make that noticeable. Okay. All right, so that looks good. That's a good underpainting and kind of a second layer there. So what we could do next, let's try to add some white in here. So I'm gonna keep using this size 6 filbert, and I'm just gonna take some titanium white, and I'm gonna see if I can add that white in where I see it in the reference. And then it's on this side. And there's kind of like different, so try to look at the shape and think about what shape it is. And just like thinking about that before you start can kind of help you get the right shape that you're looking for. Okay, and then I notice there's a couple of white marks over here. I can put those in, a couple white marks over here. Okay, and then There's white along the bottom, so you can just put that in. And there's white along this bottom. Okay. All right, I'm gonna rinse that off. So now let's look at the other shapes here. Let's move to a size 2 filbert. And I wanna take some titanium white and I wanna put a tiny bit of blue in there. So I'm just gonna take this blue, any blue will work for this. And I just want a nice light sky blue. It's kind of like the reference photo. So I need quite a bit of white. So again, the blue is going to really overpower that white. So just add a tiny bit of blue into the white. And then I want to put that beautiful blue in the center of these marks here on the butterfly. And those marks, I learned in school that these marks are supposed to look like eyes, and that's kind of camouflage for the butterfly. It's supposed to distract the predator. Okay, so you have the blue, and then around that you have a black color. So this is pretty detailed work. I'm going to stay with the filbert. I'm just going to take a Payne's gray and then just kind of make a circle around those blue marks. And you can make them different sizes, but don't try to make them too perfect. If you notice on the butterfly, these circles are not super perfect because they're made by nature. They have just a natural look. Okay, and let's see, after that it has like a kind of a tan color around it. So let that dry first and then go back and do kind of a tan color. So let's switch to the size 0 spotter and do a little more detail work. Let's take the Payne's gray and then try to go around these orange spots up here. And they have kind of a squiggly shape. So just kind of squiggle your brush around. And then I see the same on this side, so I'm just using the tip of that brush and I'm just doing like a squiggle. All right. And then I see some more kind of lines around this one, so let's put some black around that white. Okay, and then if that white is fairly dry, we could go in with that black. And if you notice, there's kind of like different shapes for the wings like this. So you can just very carefully with the tip of that brush, just make some lines, and that's going to give us the effect of the wings here, just the different sections. Okay, and then I see on the bottom there's also some of this pattern, so you can just put kind of a wave shape along the bottom. Again, you're just being really careful on the tip of that brush. And then along the bottom, make like another layer of that kind of scalloped wave type of shape. And then we can go back and put a little bit of this line to connect them. Okay, so that's a really nice detail. All right, and then I would take some of the black and add a little bit of detail to the head and the body. So you can just kind of outline it a little bit with this black and just kind of put some darker marks along the outside and maybe kind of make the sections, make the body have a little bit more of different sections there. You can also kind of blend it inward to make kind of a shadow to do a three-dimensional look. But try to leave some of that underpainting showing through so that you do have like a highlight. Okay, so if you want to, go ahead and add a little more detail. Let's take a little bit of white with some yellow ochre and a little bit of the burnt sienna. That's going to give you a nice beige color. And then see if you can carefully sweep that around the black shapes. And I'm getting a little bit of the black paint in there, which I don't really want. So it probably, like I said, would be a better idea to let it dry first before you do this step. But for the sake of the video, we're just going to keep going. So just put that tan around. And that's just going to give you a little more dimension, a little more texture, and a little more interest. And then you would go back with the titanium gray and then just put another layer of lines around there. So this painting is a lot of fun. You have all these lines and details and geometric shapes. So take your time. This is something that you could really just enjoy the meticulousness, if that's a word. You know, sometimes making something that has like a lot of little details can be fun because you can just really get lost in it. Okay. And then kind of step back, take a look at your work and see what you like, what you don't like, what you might want to change. So mine is pretty orangey, and what I might want to do is just add another layer of that brown just to kind of darken things up. Okay. All right, and then let that dry. Another thing that you could do would be some dry brushing, but you would have to let that dry first. So for dry brushing, what you could do is just take a dry brush, put a little bit of white paint on there, and then kind of, you could use like a paper towel to get the excess off. And then when you go on top of the brown, you could see how it makes like a very, it's kind of like a soft layer of paint that shows the underneath color. And that can give you some of that velvet texture that the butterfly has or the moth has. You can see, and that would be a really cool effect that you could do for this painting. Some dry brushing with some white. You could even do it with some light blue. Okay, but we're going to stop there. So thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you want to see more videos, and we'll see you in the next tutorial. Thanks for watching. Bye.